For the last couple of months, I have been looking for good manga literally every single day. And one of my favorite ways to do that is checking out the recommendations you guys send me. Some are absolutely incredible, while others are the biggest pieces of dog shit. But for some reason, I didn't fully understand this one specific manga called Choujin X kept popping up every once in a while. So I was excited, I was pumped, I was hyped. Surely a manga recommended by at least 3 people was going to be a banger, right? But as I was about to start, I discovered it was created by the same dude who wrote Tokyo Ghoul. And that really scared me. Not because Tokyo Ghoul is bad or anything, but because I know how insane manga fans can get about their favorite authors, even if they made the biggest pieces of dog shit. As time passed, I went from 3 comments to dozens of comments asking me to read it. There were more and more positive reviews and videos, and generally almost everyone was saying this manga was an absolute masterclass.
For me, I can't say enough about this author.
Choujin X actually has a pretty cool world.
The characters are amazing, the story is engaging.
Which is kind of crazy, because if I know anything about the manga community, is that we almost never agree on that kind of stuff. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show you the things people love about Choujin X. But more importantly, I'm gonna find out if it's actually that good or just hype. Okay, so according to a lot of people, the story of Choujin X is absolutely awesome. Like, check this out. This person says, from the first chapter, I knew I was gonna collect this series. The story sucks you in straight away. Now, I'm gonna read chapter 1. I'm gonna tell you what happens in chapter 1, and if it doesn't suck me in right away like the person said, well, that's a pretty bad sign. So I might just stop the video right there, honestly. Okay, so this whole thing starts with a dude called Tokyo Kurohara. And let me tell you right now, this man is lost. He relies on his best friend for literally everything. Like, I'm not joking, he cannot take a single decision without him. I mean, there's literally a moment where he sees a group of guys being like horrible with a girl, right? So he's like, okay, this girl is in trouble. I'm gonna help out. Hey bro, could you come over here and help out this person who's literally in trouble in front of me? On it. Let go of her, you motherfucker. Sorry. Got carried away. Let go of her, you thugs. This is Asuma. He is super charismatic, always ready to help, elite athlete, top of his class, and also an absolute menace. He shows up like a superhero, kicks this dude with so much force that it breaks his bones, and calls it a day. So a little later, this dude actually comes back for revenge. This time, he unlocks extremely dangerous powers. He becomes a Choujin. What this means is that he has the ability to extend his neck. Asuma and Tokyo are about to get annihilated, but they get an idea. Hey, Tokyo? Yeah? Do you see this mysterious liquid that apparently turned this dude into a Choujin, but could potentially be extremely dangerous to us? Yeah? We should have it. I'm not a huge fan of that. Oh, okay, I guess we're doing it. And that's how Tokyo turns into the bird Choujin and quite literally one-shots the long-necked dude. So far, the story constantly transitions between these light and these dark moments, but in a way that never feels forced. I kid you not, in so many series, I feel like either the humor is completely out of place or it's super dark all the time, which gets kind of boring after a while. But here, I think it's actually pretty seamless, and it also hits that perfect sweet spot between seinen and shonen. Okay, listen, this is only the first chapter. I might change my mind later, but for the moment, I'm gonna agree with what people are saying. The storytelling is good. Whew. I don't have to stop the video. That's nice. But now we need to see if the rest of the manga is good. I mean, that's kind of important. And the next thing that I've heard from a lot of people is that the art in Choujin X is absolutely gorgeous. For example, this person says, the art is definitely one of the greatest things here. No one can lie about that. Everything is so detailed and beautifully done. In fact, everything seems very well made to me. So I have an idea. To figure out if what this person says is true, I'm gonna find some beautiful panels from Choujin X and compare them to the best panels from the author's previous manga, Tokyo Ghoul. I started chapter 2 and this was the first panel that caught my eye. Okay, so I literally just started the chapter and there's this random panel where this girl is in this beautiful field of tomatoes and she takes this big juicy tomato, right? But then this terrifying face appears on the tomato because she's having vision, I guess, and I cannot stop staring at it. So now let's compare to this Tokyo Ghoul panel. Honestly, I kind of prefer the Tokyo Ghoul panel, like just a tiny bit. So I'm gonna say 1-0 for Tokyo Ghoul. I continued reading until I got to this moment. Okay, so this is the same girl from before, and she's trying to run away from this dude who's chasing her, and for some reason, smoke starts coming out of her hand. And check this out, the paneling in this entire page is super chaotic, which really makes you feel the panic she's going through. And this is the Tokyo Ghoul panel it's going against, and I actually 100% prefer the Choujin X one this time. Like, I don't necessarily think that the drawing is better, but it just makes you feel the situation way more. So that's 1-1. And only 2 pages later. Oh, dude. So she hurts her on hand to stop the smoke, and just look at this page. Like, you can barely even recognize that this is an arm at this point. And there are even a bunch of like these crazy patterns all over the page. I mean, dude, look at this panel and tell me you're not at least feeling a little bit, a tiny bit of this excruciating pain. Oof. Okay, the Tokyo Ghoul panel is actually sick, but yeah, no, I still like the Choujin X one way more. I think it just hits harder in my opinion. And the more I read, the more this crazy stuff kept happening. So there is this moment where Tokyo tries using his vulture powers, right? And the thing is, all this transformation stuff is kind of new to him at this point, so he's not used to it, and his body feels really weird, which is why you suddenly get this panel where he's completely distorted, and it almost feels like some kind of abstract art. And this is the Tokyo Ghoul panel, and to be honest, I think it looks prettier, but I genuinely think that the Choujin X panel is better. It's just super weird, and I love it. So yeah, 1-3. I also just realized that I've been showing you some pretty unusual panels, right? But what I forgot to mention, look at that, is that there are also a lot of really detailed and realistic panels like this one, for example. But honestly, I do feel like he does that kind of stuff a bit more in Tokyo Ghoul, and I mean, if I compare those two, I think the Tokyo Ghoul panel is way more impressive. So that's gonna be 2-3. Oh, I also wanted to quickly shout out this panel that kind of reminds me of the shocked guy meme, and that's literally the only reason. I'm not even gonna compare it to anything. So Choujin X actually wins 2-3 against Tokyo Ghoul. Listen, reading Choujin X sometimes feels like a very weird experience because you'll go from a bunch of regular panels like these ones to suddenly getting stuff that looks like this. And somehow the author manages to switch between both of these styles in a way that just works, and that's madness. I feel like he's focusing more on creating these weird and abstract drawings that make you feel something rather than making everything look beautiful and realistic. And personally, I'm really into that. It almost kind of reminds me of Gachiakuta, not because it looks similar, but in the sense that the author just has their own unique style, and that's super rare. Like, I mean, how many authors can you recognize just by looking at their drawing? So generally, the art was good, for sure. But because this is a fighting manga, for the art to be as good as everyone was saying, the fights had to look awesome. So at some point, Tokyo goes to the zoo and gets attacked by this snake lady, and have a look at these panels. Okay, now I'm at this part where there's a fight against a lady who uses weapons made out of literal paper. And again, look at these panels. But the next fight surprised me the most. Okay, so remember how in the beginning, Azuma and Tokyo got the Choujin powers? At some point, they actually fight each other. Azuma knows a lot of martial arts, and you see him use these techniques against Tokyo. And trust me, he continues with the most relentless moves. He punches him like 100 times. He throws him on a literal moving truck. But then, Tokyo transforms to fight back, and they both pull some moves that honestly look straight out of Naruto, or a WWE match. I'm not sure. The action scenes in Choujin X are genuinely exceptional. And the part that's mind-boggling is that there are more fights exactly like those every couple of chapters. Listen, as soon as I saw Azuma kick the Mohawk guy in chapter 1, I knew the fights were going to look incredible. So I 100% agree with what people are saying. I cannot stress enough how insane Ishida's art is in this manga. Like, we're genuinely talking about someone who's operating at the absolute peak of what's possible in this medium. It almost feels impossible to showcase how incredible the art is because there are so many awesome panels all the time. But now, if there's one thing I know, is that good fights are a little bit about good art, sure, but mostly about a good power system. And luckily, there are a bunch of people out there praising Choujin X's power system. Someone even wrote, the power system is what I think will grab most people. I love it personally. And because I've talked about so many power systems on this channel, I know how hard it is to create a good one. So I need to see if this is true. And you know what? I'm actually gonna need your help for this. Imagine you live in the world of Choujin X, okay? Now, let's say it's the weekend, it's sunny outside, so you go to the park, you buy an ice cream, but suddenly, this random dude runs up to you, steals your ice cream, and runs away. You get super mad, like, oh my god, that was my favorite ice cream! And bam, you start running as fast as the Flash. You catch the dude and you get the ice cream back. Your Choujin powers have awakened. But here's the thing. your powers aren't random. Maybe your favorite sport is something where you have to run a lot. Maybe your favorite superhero is actually the Flash. Or maybe you're the type of person who Naruto runs in public. I know you've already done it. Don't lie to me. Your abilities manifest based on your deepest desires or your personality. Okay. So now you have Choujin powers. What do you do? Well, the problem is that you're a beginner, so your powers can activate pretty easily and pretty randomly, which is obviously really dangerous and yeah, not super convenient. Like, you could just be running for fun, and suddenly you go extremely fast, which makes you crash into a wall. So let's say you don't want that to happen, okay? You're actually going to train to control your powers. And in the beginning, it's super tough, but the better you get, the more your power evolves. For example, you could start with a pair of magic shoes when you use your powers, but then you're gonna get better, and maybe your powers will look like the fast alien from Ben 10. And then finally, when you have perfectly and fully mastered your powers, your final and ultimate form will be flip-flops and socks. Congratulations. And if you get even better, you can learn a thing called raising where you instantly heal. But it's extremely painful and will push you closer to something called the chaos state, which is something you absolutely need to avoid. Basically, it's a transformation that makes you way more powerful, but if you use it too much, there's a pretty good chance you'll stay in it forever. And considering how people in it look, I don't recommend. Okay, so those are kind of the basic rules of the power system. But now the question is it actually good in the manga? To find out, let's rank some of the power systems in the story. This guy is really good at baseball, specifically the shot where he throws the ball and it drops. So his Choujin powers allow him to make everything he touches or throws super heavy and it falls down. I would say that's B tier. This girl's mother was a very famous thief, so she has the ability to steal powers from anyone. I would say that's a B tier too. This dude has a lot of insecurities and he kind of feels trapped in them, so his Choujin powers are these iron chains that can turn into a bunch of weapons and even armor. With this one, I'm gonna say A tier. This lady can cut shapes of paper and give them the properties of what they represent. So for example, she can cut a paper airplane and then fly on it. Okay, so this one, I'm kind of hesitant to put it into S tier, but I'll say A tier for the moment. And then we have the GOAT of Choujin X. This man can package people up into delivery boxes. It is simultaneously the lamest and the best power I have ever seen. What can I say? Easy S tier. And of course, we have Tokyo. At some point, we see this flashback where he's in school and kids are comparing him to a vulture because he's basically always around his best friend Azuma. But even though he hates it in the beginning, he slowly starts to think vultures are kind of cool. And that's why he becomes the vulture Choujin. When he starts, he's pretty terrible at using his powers, so his bird wings look like this weird combination of feathers and fingers, which looks interesting, but it's not really good for flying. But as he becomes more confident, his wings slowly become way more impressive and like actual bird wings. I'm gonna give this one an S tier as well. So yeah, this is the final ranking. As characters grow emotionally, their powers literally transform to reflect that growth. That's such a refreshing change from power systems where you just train harder to hit harder, and it makes you so much more invested in each character's evolution and growth. Choujin X's power system directly ties to character development in a way that I've almost never seen. I also feel like we often praise stuff like Nen or Cursed Energy where everything fits into specific categories and there are a lot of rules. And don't get me wrong, I love that stuff. But in Choujin X, the power system doesn't have many rules at all. And that's pretty fun too. And on top of that, there's a massive variety of powers, which is awesome because we get to experience a bunch of wacky combat styles. Like, I was joking about the box guy, but he's actually great. So you know what? I'm gonna agree with what people are saying. The power system is freaking awesome. But now, I also heard that Choujin X had some of the best characters that people have seen in a very long time. Like, there's this comment I really like that says, Azuma and Tokyo's relationship is so painfully beautiful and tragic that it tears away at the reader's heartstring. I mean, if this is not good character writing, then I don't know what is. Let's check. But to see if it's true, I'm gonna start with the main character. Okay, so I went back to the beginning of the story because I really need to show you this. Tokyo is this completely regular dude going to school, right? But he's also kind of a zombie. Like, for example, there's this one scene where he goes to the Choujin organization and the boss asks him, "Do you have a dream?" Pretty basic. But Tokyo bends his head and has no answer while realizing that for most of his life, he just went with whatever Azuma went with. And dude, I genuinely felt sad reading this. But then check this out. He joins the Choujin organization, he goes on a mission, and another, then another, then another, until he understands that he just isn't strong enough for all of this. And that's when he finally sees that what he wants to do is help people. That's his dream. And obviously he's really worried because he has to tell his family that he's not going to continue school. His sister is super mad. She's shouting at him. She's telling him it's a waste of time and that he should at least finish the school year. But his dad does something very surprising. He brings him to the balcony, gives him some money and tells him, you can quit school if you're serious about it. So what does he do? He joins the organization as a full-time member and goes to the most dangerous city in the country to become strong. And that's not the craziest part. A few years later, he returns from his training and this man is more confident, he's way more powerful, and he doesn't follow anyone. In fact, he disobeys orders pretty often. Basically, he's a completely new person. Tokyo's growth is a gradual evolution that takes many chapters and many years in the story. So when you finally see him stand on his own and make his own decisions, it feels so satisfying because you still remember the insecure kid from chapter 1. Unlike a lot of shonen protagonists who start with some clear goal like, I want to be Hokage or I'm going to be the king of pirates, right? Tokyo has to actually discover what he wants and who he is. And that makes him very different from a lot of main characters, but also super relatable and kind of inspiring. Like, I'm sure that a lot of people watching this have felt lost or unsure about their place in the world at some point in their lives. But now, what about his rival? I mean, any good shonen needs a good rival. Okay, so the first time we see Azuma, he's basically this perfect dude, right? One day, everything changes. Tokyo gets captured by these Choujin bad guys. Azuma follows them to save him and tries fighting. And even though he's a genius, he gets absolutely destroyed. And that's when he finally transforms into a Choujin. But why? Like, why this moment specifically? I mean, he absorbed the Choujin liquid at the same time as Tokyo in chapter 1. What happens is that Azuma gets a flashback. He remembers a time when he arm wrestled Tokyo when they were kids. And in that moment, you can see Azuma realizing that Tokyo might actually be way stronger than he thought. And that terrifies him, because ever since they've known each other, Azuma has pretty much been Tokyo's hero, and he doesn't want to lose that. So when he isn't able to beat the Choujin and save his friend, this image that he had of himself is shattered, and he loses his freaking mind, which makes him turn into a Choujin. This dude who seemed so perfect is actually terrified of being surpassed by his friend who was always seen as a weaker guy. This is such a complicated and realistic emotion. Azuma goes from this perfect hero to someone struggling with his own problems, and watching this transformation is beautiful, but like in a completely different way to Tokyo. He's a fantastic character with a lot of depth. The rival relationship is a shonen classic, and it's really difficult to pull off, except when your name is Sui Ishida and you create one of the best rivalries I've ever seen in shonen. Their relationship feels complicated and real, and they just complement each other so freaking well. Here's the thing, those are the two main characters, and we already seen these series where the big characters have a lot of development, but the secondary characters are left in the background. And to me, that's the difference between good and great characters. So I took the baseball guy from before as an example. Okay, so at some point we meet this character I briefly showed you before, right? He's a very talented baseball player, but he's always lived in poverty. One day, he's in the middle of the most important game of his life. This is the game that could start his entire career. He's about to throw the ball as he thinks, I'll make it out of this place and bring my little brothers with me. I'm done living in poverty. But as he throws the ball, it creates a massive hole in the middle of the stadium. Choujin powers have awakened, and it is illegal for people like him to compete against regular humans, meaning that his career is over. And this obviously devastates him, so he becomes a criminal. But we eventually get to a scene where Tokyo has to fight him. He goes absolutely crazy and transforms into this baseball zombie creature from before. He picks up a rock and throws it, which creates this massive hole in a wall. This other Choujin throws a bunch of smoke at him, which doesn't do anything to him. Tokyo realizes that the best way to beat him is to play baseball against him. So they play, and that's where we get this panel where the baseball guy throws a ball while we see a reflection of him as a human, but more specifically, a reflection of the throw that ended his career. I love this. This guy is he's a tiny character, but he still ends up having so much character development in just a couple of chapters. He's so memorable. In Choujin X, even smaller characters get a surprising amount of development, which is just awesome. This manga is what happens when an author understands that to create a good story, you need to create good characters. This is probably my favorite part about Choujin X so far, so I really have to give it to you guys. The characters are in fact amazing. But now, this is the thing I've actually heard the most from everyone by far. Everyone seems to think that the world building of Choujin X is absolutely incredible. Like, this person even wrote, Choujin X continually expands on the setting and lore of the world in a way that feels natural, expansive, and most importantly, fun. So I'm gonna see if that's true, because if Choujin X nails that, then it might be one of the best things I've read in a very long time. Okay, so I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna see if I can tie some of the things I've already showed you before with the world building. Okay, for example, you know how there's the Choujin organization? They're called Yamato Mori, and they basically train new Choujins to control their powers and stop bad Choujins. But then you read for a while and you meet that character called Sora, and apart from just being a bunch of hands, she's also the main villain. But you know what? She's actually the person who originally created Yamato Mori, the Choujin organization. Okay, here's another one. There's this character called Simon who has this really cool technique where he can summon a bunch of swords. And that's a technique he inherited from his clan. And at some point, we learned that they were basically a bunch of heroes that passed down this sword ability from generation to generation through tattoos. Like, they have a very deep history in this world. The problem is that they were hunted down, and Simon is actually one of the last members left. There's this entire side story for this tiny character. I love it. Okay. Now, you know how this manga is called Choujin X? I know this is like a super silly question, but why X? Well, throughout the manga, we progressively learn about this massive Great Choujin War. It was led by the War Choujin, but he was completely overthrown. He was actually defeated by Sora when she was like this. Not like this. And the reason she was able to defeat him is because she was Choujin X, a single Choujin born with enough power to either save or destroy the world once every generation. And trust me, I'm genuinely just scratching the surface. We get so much background information about all this stuff. Choujin X creates a believable world where you can imagine this society actually exists, the history and the organizations at so much depth without ever being overwhelming. Ishida gives you just enough information to understand what's happening while leaving mysteries that make you want to learn more all the freaking time. And this is something most manga never attempt. This isn't just like, there was a war 100 years ago kind of backstory. No, this is a full-on historical world building with political conflicts and cultural shifts. And all of these past events have real tangible consequences that affect the present story. Sora's addiction that turned her into this thing, the formation of Yamato Mori, the different cities and their stories, and we actually get to learn about all these things. I cannot even describe how much I enjoyed reading about all this. Choujin X feels like the manga of someone who has been mastering the art of creating manga for years and years and years. Even compared to series with massive teams, Choujin X really stands out, and this dude is creating it on his own. Are you serious? So is it actually the next big manga? The thing is, Ishida kind of drops chapters whenever he feels like it, which means that it's hard for the series to be as hype as a weekly manga can. So even though it's clearly already a masterpiece, I genuinely don't know if it's ever going to be super popular, which is such a shame because it's so freaking underrated. And I'm gonna say this right now, Choujin X is not as good as people are saying. It's way better than what people are saying. But you know what the crazy part is? I recently read another manga by another legendary author, and for some reason, it's also way too underrated.